Welcome back, everyone, to Rising Warriors Rachael Kulei. I am Nabi Mia Dachanam, woman that travels with the stars, and I'm enrolled member of Northwest Band Shoshone Nation. And today I have my beautiful sister, Dr. Sherrie Davis, back on with us today. And so if you watched last week's podcast, we were talking about de-stressing your life from toxic people. And I was actually supposed to have another guest on today, but he is traveling. And so I just kept feeling that we needed to talk about the empath after our last podcast. And so Creator moved things in a way to bring Sherrie back on today so that we could talk about this, because I felt this, we both do, that especially going from understanding, toxic people and, going into de-stressing your life from these toxic people. Well, behind that too, we were talking is also the empath. And a lot of us, a lot of people out here don't understand what an empath is. And when I'm noticing, and we were talking, when we have a lot of our patients that are in these toxic relationships, including ourselves, we've been in toxic relationships. We have empathy for these people that are going through hardships in their lives. And so with that is we have this empathy. And so I'm going to read this a little bit that I kind of found here. So just for people that don't really understand. So the term empath comes from empathy, which is the ability to understand the experiences and feelings of others outside our own perspective. So for instance, like say Sherrie had her cat, and her cat passed away, and her cat was actually taken away by an eagle. But, she has this connection with her animal, and that's her baby. And so now she's coming to me and talking about, her cat being gone and her, her little partner over here. And so for me, now I have this shared empathy for her, even maybe though I may not have lost a cat, I have this feeling for her of like this connection of like, I feel the sadness. I can share this emotion that you're going through. And so you start having this connection to somebody. So then, to go a little bit further, you start actually feeling the emotions of someone and the experience as if it was your own. And so you start taking on these things of outside traumas, emotions, and things that could be going on around you. And then you start absorbing those things and taking it on for yourself. And so with COVID going on, we've both been seeing a lot of this happening all over in different relationships. But not only that, one thing that came to my mind before we started was I wanted to just talk about just like when we were back within Black Lives Matter movement, and everybody was saying, I can't breathe. During that time, I was actually having a hard time breathing. And because the energy of everyone speaking out, I can't breathe, after this man was killed by the police officer, this energy that was being spoken every day into the universe, everyone around me, I started noticing, started having bigger or like heavier breathing problems. I was having a hard time breathing. I felt like I was suffocating. And so it was like, I was telling, some people, I'm like, okay, we need to go into this shift of, I can breathe. And so it's not, yes, okay, we addressed, this is off topic, but real quick, we addressed, the issue of like, I can't breathe, but now we changed the energetic point to I can breathe. So there's different things going on in the world that we may not understand. And even in the universe, that could throw your emotions off, could, like this full moon, there was a lot of anger issues that I saw that were coming out. And so we can feel these things. And as an empath, it makes it harder to want to go out in public. So this week for me, it was harder for me to go out into crowds because of this energy that everyone was feeling in this chaos. And, in the stores, everybody's has this fear of the COVID and, personal space. And so I start feeling anxiety and overwhelmed and anxious. And then I start feeling panicky. And so, we're going to dive deep into this today, because there's so many different tools and elements and awareness and different things that we're going to talk about that is going to help bring that awareness to you as an empath. And if you are an empath, because a lot of people don't know that they are even an empath, but you feel deeply, but you don't know what this is. And I was talking to my mom about this, and it actually goes, back further into religion, in the Catholicism of, you can only pray to the saints and these certain people, but only the bishops and the prophets and the popes, the high people are able to have this connection with Creator. And so it was, back then that they put this cap over people to not be able to really understand the empathy and to feel for others and to be able to have a higher connection. So with that, I would like to introduce Sherrie Davis over here to go a little bit deeper and really talk about what an empath is, and help we're going to help bring awareness of and then that enlightenment. And because a lot of people, we get told we're crazy, or you don't feel that way, or you're making it up, or it's all in your head. And then what happens? We get on antidepressants, we get on anxiety pills, we go on all of these. It's pills, 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 pills. When if we could just, if we open the mind and really see and understand what the big picture is and what's going on here, then you can take the matters, the reins in your own hands, and really start to see and open and put those protections up and those healthy boundaries. So with that,
it's so true.
Go ahead, take it away.
Yeah. Like what you just said, a lot of people don't realize, that they have these empathic gifts. Some people call it a gift, some people call it a curse, because it's so overwhelming. But really, it's about learning how to control it. And first of all, we're all born with it. You ever notice little kids, how sensitive they are? And they're kind of what you would call halfway in the veil of the spirit world and halfway here in the earth, right? So they're kind of in two elements, emotionally, mentally, they're still developing. And so they really don't have that construed mindset of, the world that, deprograms them of, not believing that this doesn't exist. Right. And so you'll see little kids often, speaking of things, that an adult may not see or feel. Some people call it their imaginary friends, but in a way it could also be a spirit. And so, but, giving validation to somebody that they aren't crazy is one of the most important parts. I know that me as a therapist, like last week I had a new patient who, she was talking about how her mom always calls her crazy and how her friends don't believe her. And, people in her family circle think she's crazy and that it's all up here. Right. And actually, when I did the telepathic test with her to see what her kinesthetic system was like and how sensitive she was able to pick up every single image that I was telepathically sending her within a second. She didn't have to think about it. And it would come just like that, right? It's just like immediate. There it is. And so when you think about how the empaths, how the sensory is, it's really called a higher kinesthetic sensory. So basically everybody has what you would call gut instinct or animal instinct. So imagine that like a dog or a cat, they're very hypersensitive, right? So they can pick up things coming down from a mile away to something that's right here in front of you. And
Mm-hmm.
so often what you'll get, human nature also has the same kind of abilities as animals as well. And especially like dogs, but like you were talking about my cat was very
Right.
intuitive. Oh my goodness, that cat would tell me stuff and I would be on high alert going, okay, pay attention, something's going to happen. And every
Uh-huh.
time as I paid attention to that cat, he was right on. And
Mm-hmm.
the first week I had taken him and we moved to this condo, and that whole day my sensory was saying, oh my gosh, somebody's going to break in. Oh my gosh. And I was having a panic attack. Well, the cat was too, and he was pacing back and forth and looking at the door and then talking to me and telling
Uh-huh.
me we can't go to bed yet, and it's late at
Uh-huh.
night, and I go to bed and it's midnight, and I was like, well, I got to go to sleep. I have to get up early for work. Well, right as we laid down on the bed, the cat was like hovering over me, like in protection mode. And he kept looking at the bedroom window. So I knew something was coming, and I could feel it too. And
Uh-huh.
right about that time, somebody tried to break into the front door, and the
Oh.
cat was like hissing and growling at the window, and he was hovering over me, wouldn't even let me get up. And I was trying to get up to get to my phone. Well, it's things like that we have to not ignore, because our
Uh-huh.
kinesthetic sensory is built into us naturally to protect ourselves as well, but also to make us more aware of what's coming at us, what we're feeling, whether it's emotions from someone else or our own emotions. Empaths often will pick up emotions from other people, and it can cause them anxiety or depression, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like I was saying last week, I had a client who, after doing all the tests with her, the kinesthetic test to, the telepathic test, kind of testing every avenue of her sensory system, I was able to validate to her, which was a blessing, really, because all these years she'd been told she was crazy, to let her know that she wasn't crazy, and
Mm-hmm.
that she had a
Mm-hmm.
gift that she needed to learn how to develop and control.
Right.
And that's a big thing. It's like learning how to control it, learning how to develop it so that it doesn't set off anxiety or high stresses or depression, things like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but, an empath, basically you have, the five sensories, right? And
Right.
most empaths have a sensory of emotion where they can feel emotions, they can sense things that are coming at them, they can feel things like, say, for instance, like I get this all the time. I'll go down Mill Plain and all of a sudden a car will go by me and I can feel their anxiety and I can feel their stress or their anger, right? Or I can
Uh-huh.
feel something else that they're going through at that time that they're driving by. And
Mm-hmm.
so and most people ignore that. And so when I feel that, I just say love and light, send you love and light. I don't take on your emotions, right? So an
Right.
empath often will absorb those emotions from other people, not realize that they're even doing it. They'll carry back pain. All of a sudden they got pain in their back, right? Or their
Right.
neck or wherever it's going to attach to,
Uh-huh.
solar plex even. And so, or they'll take on that emotional pain that somebody may be carrying, or maybe they just reverted up on them, like through communication, talking about it, with their friends or family. Sometimes empaths, after they talk to someone who's unloaded all their problems on them, they take on the emotional trait, but they also take on, that emotion of depression or anxiety or that sense of sadness, if it's
Mm-hmm.
something that that person is going through. Have you ever noticed that how positive and negative affects you? Negative always drains your energy and you feel like you need to go take a nap, right? Like, I'm so
Right.
tired, I can't hardly open my eyes because now it's
Uh-huh.
drained you. Where
Mm-hmm.
positive energy keeps you up and high and feeling good, and the energy recharges your system. So it's just like a battery where you got the positive and the negative. Well, the energy is pretty much the same way, and when an empath absorbs those energies from others, they have much more higher sensory system. So that's
Mm-hmm.
where the kinesthetic sensory of the empath, can absorb, can feel that emotion, say, It's like when we talk, we talk about things and then we feel each other's emotions that come through what we're talking about.
Right.
And it's important that as people understand that within themselves, how to also deal with it as well, not take it on basically, but learn how to kind of revert it into the light and just say, oh, I send that to love, I send that to light, I release and I heal this from that person, but also from myself so that I don't take it on. And so, but in empath sensory, so often you can have more of, some people have the kinesthetic sensory where they can, feel and sense, and it can drain your energy if you're not grounded, and the energy can affect you like through pain and the stress connecting to your body, and it can become a physical element as well, because you can absorb it, time after time after time, and then all of a sudden you feel sick. And so when that happens, you really have to divert that, and you have to learn how to clear it from yourself and understand who you just absorbed it from as well, because then you need to work on clearing the cords, not only from yourself, but that distant energy to that person. And so everybody connects, right? So if you think about our connections through everyone that we meet, we always connect energetically. And so when that energetic bond starts to take place, whether it's good or bad, an empath will pick up a little sense of their energy or their spirit and carry that with them. Sometimes I call it the emotional baggage that we carry for others, because empaths can easily absorb that, right?
So
and you'll notice that after, right? And you'll notice that after that person kind of unloads all their stuff, they feel so much better, and now you feel like crap. Right?
Exactly.
So you have to, and they'll tell you, oh, I feel so much better. I feel lighter and more released from this,
Exactly.
And that's where you have to say, okay, I don't allow that person's stuff to attach to me, or affect you. And so, but, an empath sensory too, you can have what's called clairsentience, clairvoyance, which is about being able to see, sense, feel, and hear, or even pick up telepathic, thoughts and emotions. Sometimes when a person has more of that higher telepathic sensory, it can give them headaches because they're picking up the energetic wavelength of the thought of the other person. Even if they didn't speak it, they're still picking up whatever that wavelength is, and it'll affect the brain. And the pineal gland is kind of in the center of the brain, mid-center of the brain. The pineal gland acts as that psychic antenna. So when it's got a higher, frequency or higher hormone levels that it produces, then often that person can be much more attuned telepathically or even emotionally, because it will affect you in that sensory system. But, and even being able to pick up the hearing part of it, people say, oh, I feel crazy. I thought I just heard something, right? Well, they're not crazy. They really just did hear whatever that wavelength of thought or process of energy just came through. It's just being able to deal with it properly and not feel crazy. It's like last week trying to validate this patient to doing these testings on her to show her that, you don't need that antidepressant or that antipsychotic drug, because what does it do? It actually suppresses the system and it shuts it down, right? But at the same time, for empathic people or telepathic people, it actually enhances it and makes it worse. And so, because the hormone levels are different. And so you'll find that people that have, more of an empathic abilities, they've got to validate that they're not crazy and that they have just what an animal would have, higher kinesthetic sensory of emotions. And we're all born with it. So that's another thing that people need to realize is, I think too that through time, and I hate to say this, but through religion, is that we've been programmed to believe that it doesn't exist and that it's from the devil.
Yep.
Right? That's not true at all. if we're born with
Mm-mm.
it as babies, well, babies don't come from the devil, right? Right?
Right,
And they don't come from
exactly.
something weird or toxic. So how could it be coming from that? And the telepathic and empathic gifts and the kinesthetic sensory gifts, are really just a built-in beacon to our natural sensory system. Like anything, like gut instinct, everybody believes in gut instinct. What is gut instinct? It's part of the kinesthetic sensory. It's part of that empathic sensory as well.
Uh-huh.
And, or what they call animal instincts, right? Everybody
Right.
believes in animal instincts and gut instincts. So why don't you believe in empathic instincts, right? It's the same exact
Exactly.
thing.
Exactly.
It, yeah, just the empaths have a higher sensory system, and
Mhm.
sometimes empaths, when they don't deal with it properly, they can be very emotional or over emotional in some cases. Often I'll find when that happens, when they cry a lot, or they're always having a great deep of sadness or grief and they don't
Mhm.
know why. And
Mhm.
one, it's because their energy is not grounded and they haven't cleared things that they've absorbed from 100 other people, right?
Right.
That they've came in contact with through
Right.
their life. And so they really have to learn how to clear that energy, cut the cords to it. I think we talked a lot about cutting cords last time.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But you kind of have to do the same thing with energy that you absorb. And so, but yeah, if you think about your sensory system, what is it? It's emotional, right? So whether it's the heart emotion, the stomach emotion, every organ also has an emotional energy that can attach to it.
Mhm.
Um, our brain creates an emotion, but also the hormones are really important, how that affects us as well. So if something is
Right.
out of balance, often we can have, our sensory system is out of balance as well, because the hormones help feed it, help bring in that healthy balance into the kinesthetic sensory system.
Mhm.
And so, but yeah, the telepaths, that's a really interesting one, because the empathic telepath, no, when they're picking up those frequencies and they're getting constant headaches or migraines, things like that, they're not protecting the energy. I always tell them, well, you need to wear a piece of pyrite on you, because pyrite
Mhm.
is a protective stone, but it's a grounding stone and it helps to deflect or not allow those energies to attach. And
Right.
so then it keeps the whole, third eye, crown chakra clear, but also balanced at the grounding chakras, kind of connecting and grounding. You'll find that, like with pyrite, they call it fool's gold too.
Mhm.
It's a beautiful stone, but talk about a powerful energy that it gives. Um, and
Right.
the frequency is very calm and subtle as well. So I always like to bless the stones as well, so that it doesn't have an attachment from someone else that may have touched it from wherever I
Mhm.
purchase it from or get it from. Because
Right.
often patients will bring their stones in and it'll have something attached. Then we got to clear it. And then we've got to
Right.
ground it to their energy so that it connects better to them. So it's not
Mhm.
feeling off or weird, and make sure the polarity of the system is balanced with it. Now, when you think about polarities, what is that? It's also part of the kinesthetic sensory system that empaths have. And every single energetic part of the body has a polarity. It's called the energy frequency, basically. And when we
Mhm.
pick up frequencies of others or even emit energy from ourselves, those polarity systems can either become unbalanced or it can become really strong. And so often what'll happen is, when I find people that their energy is not grounded around their feet, their legs, from the tip of the spine down to their feet, their emotions
Mhm.
are all over the place, right? And that's where the
Right.
empath can get really confused, about what they're picking up, because it causes a state of confusion, basically.
Mhm.
But then, the crown and third eye chakra, it's very important too with empaths to keep that clear from any blockages, because that will cause headaches or stress. Some people get kind of like a pressure across the forehead,
Uh-huh.
or when people
Uh-huh.
are picking up
Like,
frequencies, they'll get, around the temples, or
uh-huh.
they'll get like a weird tingling right in here, where it
Mm-hmm.
makes it feel like something's tingling, or pressure is right at the
Uh-huh.
forehead. And that's where, the pineal gland's going to shoot out that energy right through there and through the top of the head. And when an empath picks up things, telepathically or emotionally, that area of the head can feel like it's tingling, or there's pressure, or around the temples as well. And
Mm-hmm.
so they'll get pressure there, or headache, at the back of the head. They could pick something up there and feel like, gosh, someone just hit me in the back of the head, right?
Right.
But that's actually can be a negative energy that they picked up from something,
Uh-huh.
and it'll make it feel like somebody just smacked you, in the head there, or the neck, either way, because it'll carry on that area of the body.
Yeah, and then
But
sometimes, like for me, it feels like almost like I'm wearing like a 100-pound backpack on my shoulders. So it's like this like heavy,
yeah,
dense weight, just like trying to like almost like suppress in a way. But I always notice that that's when
uh-huh,
I
right.
absorbed way too much, or I went into a crowd and I didn't like properly
Hmm.
protect myself going into that
Oh
space.
yeah,
And then all of a
yeah.
sudden I go in and it's just like oh my goodness, like I feel like I'm like carrying like an elephant on my back right now. It's so heavy.
Yeah,
So that's the other thing. So we have a question is
it's
like, so
true.
how can caregivers protect themselves from people that are in chronic pain? So that goes back to the pyrite,
Oh yes. Yes, it
right?
does. It goes back to the pyrite. You can carry a stone called selenite, which is a really great cleansing stone. And you can also clear yourself with selenite or quartz crystal.
Mm-hmm.
Pyrite's a really good one for kind of cleansing and clearing as well. But it's also a protective energy with that stone. But what I always like to do too, like if you feel like, say, you absorb something at the end of the day, get in a nice salt bath and help to clear that energy that you may have absorbed, because salt is another way of purification and releasing things that you may have absorbed from others, especially caretakers,
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's like, even myself as a therapist, I have to learn to, not absorb the patient's energy, what they're
Right.
telling me or what they're unloading in the therapy session, and
Uh-huh.
often with being an empath, you easily can take that on, but it's really about making sure that you're grounded, especially the grounding energy. You want to make sure there at your feet that the energy is grounded. And what I mean by that is that the chakras and the polarities are all balanced. So the energy of the body just as important as the physical body. So if you
Mm-hmm.
look at how the meridians and the chakra systems work together, and that's part of that energetic frequency. And so it's important to keep that piece of the body clear from anything that you could have absorbed, and balanced as well. So it's always like kind of clear and open, and the frequency is at a higher frequency and not low, and, feeling drained, or, carrying the pain from someone else. Another thing for pain, which is really nice, like I was saying, doing the salt or the salt bath, sometimes I'll carry like a little, it's called uh, what's it called? Black Himalayan. It's a
Oh,
Hawaiian salt.
uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's a Hawaiian salt called Black Himalayan Hawaiian salt. And that
Mm-hmm.
is a good cleanser and a purifier as well, but it also protects. And sometimes I'll just carry a little bit of that in my medicine bag or something if I feel like I need it that day. And
Right.
some people do really well with a stone called jet, and jet's really lightweight. I mean, you pick it up, it looks like a heavy rock, and when you pick it up, there's no weight to it at all. It just
Mm-hmm.
feels like it's air. But
Mm-hmm.
jet is a really good one too, to protect and cleanse, and not allow you to absorb pain from other people or their stresses that they may be
Right.
carrying. But you can
Right.
also give it to that person as well, to be able to carry on them. And But pyrite is a really good one for pain patients. If they carry that, the pain is less, or selenite, things like that. Often I'll have them do, antioxidants and anti-inflammatory type diet, because if they're not, and they're eating tons of sugar, eating tons of carb, fatty foods, stuff like that, they'll have more pain and they'll have more inflammation in the body. And so it's really about kind of too, as caretakers, to be able to be careful with what they are eating if you're preparing meals for them, because maybe they're getting too much sugar or getting too much carbs or fatty foods in their diet, which can cause a ton of inflammation and a lot of pain. A lot of people don't even realize that they're gluten intolerant and dairy intolerant. And those are the two highest inflammatory and allergy foods that cause tons of pain in the body. And they'll get a lot of pain in the joints. And so I'll see like arthritis patients, for instance, or joint patients or muscle issues. It's often contributed to too much sugar, too much dairy in the diet, and too much gluten. And those three things can cause tons of pain and tons of inflammation. And so really it's about not just learning how to eat, but also learning how to ground and protect the energy. And when you're a caretaker, you really have to be careful with that. And you have to learn how to clear the energy at the end of the day, so that whatever you did take on from that patient, you're not carrying it with you after you get home. And so, and when you do have it, when you get home, the best thing to do is like, a salt bath or some sort of, saging of your body, or using selenite to clear the energy. Usually selenite will come in like a big long stick, or it'll come in different sizes. Usually I'll take it and just kind of go over my body with it and kind of talk about to myself, I clear, release all energies and frequencies, pain or negative energies that I may have absorbed from others. So I tell myself this, I'll say, nope, I release what I've taken on from, and sometimes you'll know who it is. So you just say, I release it from, and then say the person's name.
Right.
Clear that cord, clear that energy that you've taken on. So, and sometimes you just want to pull it like this from your shoulders when you hold it here in your neck, and just act like you're physically pulling something off, clearing it and throwing it out. Let it go. Don't hang on to it, because it'll definitely, especially for women, it goes right there to the neck and the shoulders, or even low back, but it's mainly up here. It's called what I call carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. That's what women do, right? As they carry it there, and then it affects the neck. It's so true. And so,
like another one too is the grounding outside too. So like that was the other thing, is like, so being in the city, if you don't have access to these things, another thing is going outside and grounding. And I'll actually later on this week I'll do a grounding meditation, so stay tuned for that. So I'll do that for you guys, to go a little bit deeper into grounding outside if you don't have all of these things, because sometimes we don't have access to different tools, or if you don't have them right at this moment, the water, even just standing in the shower is a really good one. And then but going out into the ground outside, and real quick, what I do, and I'll go deeper into it in the meditation, but what you do is when you're standing in the ground, if you can, you want to be barefoot, and you want to close your eyes, and you want to imagine that the ground is actually coming up to about your waist level. And so you want to imagine that you're from your waist down, it's like you're stuck in the ground, but you're able to move within the ground of the earth. And so I'm actually imagining that ground and my body sinking down into the ground. And then from there, like a tree, you have the roots. And so then now in the mind, you go through and you start grounding your roots deep down into the ground. And when you start feeling that, you'll start feeling this energy, like you're like sunk in the earth for a moment. Then from there, you hold that from there. And then from the upper part of your body, you imagine like a tall tree now growing and growing, reaching to the universe and growing up into the universe and connecting. That way you're grounded, and then you're still staying spiritually connected too. So wherever you're going, you have this connection of this energetic field of your accord to the higher self and yourself and to the creator. And so that is one thing that I do for grounding, is really, standing there. Sometimes it takes me about 15 minutes to do it, but the more you practice in doing this, it becomes quicker. So 15 minutes could become 5 minutes, to become maybe like 2 minutes, where you are so in tune and like the mechanics, and I've got this down, and you're like, boom, all right, go. And so but that comes with that practice of it. So I wanted to say that too, because someone was asking here about the grounding too, because being in the city. So that's one thing that I do. And then sometimes I can't wait until after I get home, after that client that I work with. And so I actually go in, for me, after each client, I have to schedule a time for me to go regroup myself, to prepare myself for the next person, so that I'm clearing myself after each person I'm working with, so that I'm not taking anything into the next and into the next. But that's where I'm at on my journey. We all have, different strengths and gifts, and we're on different levels of things, right, in life. And so for my tools, for me at this moment, I can't wait until I get home at night. I have to do it after almost every single client I have. I'm like, all right, I have to recenter myself and regroup myself and re-prepare myself for that next person to come, and kind of switch that, get the shift of that mind. So, it goes both ways. You don't always just have to wait until you get home or you're done for the day, even if it's like quickly in your room, or you walk by, you're like, all right, clear. This is what we do, is because the meridian, is through the top of the head all the way down the back. And so you can even just use if you don't have, quartz or anything, you can still, the energy from your hand, using that energy to clear, from your body, and just, clear and send love, light, and beauty. So that's another tool that I do, as well as the other things that Sherrie's talking about as well. But those are some of the things that I do with that. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. It is, because it's so important to take that time for yourself too, as you've absorbed things, throughout your day. We can absorb things from coworkers too, because even if coworkers can unload all their problems and their stresses, right? Everybody has it. And so it's really about learning to kind of keep a boundary to that as well, not take it on. Empaths are so sensitive, it's like, so many people have different gifts of sensory system, so it's just like, some people are a little bit more tuned to it. Some people are a little more guarded or don't really listen, but at the same time, they can still take it on even if they're not paying attention.
Right.
But yeah, you're right though.
So that's the other thing I was going to say, is that so for me too, if I also too, sometimes if someone just starts all of a sudden just vomiting on me, in my mind, I have to tell myself, I am here to listen. I am not absorbing and taking this from you. Because that was one thing that I once did, was I was like, I just want to help. I want to help, and I want to help, and I want to save these people. But in the midst of this, I'm like, I'm taking all of their stuff and they're vomiting, and it becomes my problem. But then now I'm stuck with the solution. Like, I'm stuck to resolve the issue and the problem that's not even mine. And now what my mom actually taught me when I was younger was, she said, Rachel, stop taking their things on. You're prolonging their learning.
It's true.
And she would tell me that, she goes, you're prolonging their learning. When you start taking on too much of that person's stuff, you're taking so much from them that they're not able to actually go through their own learning lessons in life. And then what happens is we start, as the empath, we start watching that person repeat the same thing over again. And then you take it again from them, right? And then what happens? They go and repeat it again. And then you're sitting over here like, why do they keep doing this? I'm helping them. But it's like we're helping too much, where we're not allowing them to actually learn. And so we actually are prolonging someone's learning through their own journey when we absorb and take on too much, which is not ours to take on. So I have to remind myself that I'm here, I can listen, I can give you advice, through spirit and guided intuition. But I have to tell myself in my mind, and while I'm talking to my body and my spirit and saying and already putting up that I can't absorb this. I can have sympathy for you. I can have compassion for you. I can have that empathy for you, but I'm not going to take it and take it, all that pain from you and all these traumas and these things, because now I've just literally just took something from you that was supposed to be part of your learning. And so now it becomes mine. And then and then what happens? We go into this like, why isn't this person listening? And why do I have to always fix the problem? And why do I always have to be the one to figure this out? Why aren't you figuring it out? And like my mom said to me, because you're taking it. And so when she said that to me, and I was like,
it's true, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So you have to start to learn those boundaries, that we can have empathy for people, but still set those boundaries. So I wanted to go for a little further into now with relationships, because we as empaths, we stay in toxic relationships way longer than we should, because we end up, it's like that toxic person ends up taking advantage. And this is what we were talking about yesterday. They end up taking advantage of the empath and the good heart of that person. So I wanted to kind of like dive into that part too of, what you see and what, because we've both been there where we just want to help that person and we want to love that person. And we see that that person went through all of these hard struggles in their life. And, so we have this empathy and we have this understanding of why they're mean, why they're angry, why they're, abusive and things like that. But then at the same time, it doesn't make it okay. And it doesn't make it okay for us to take the abuse and to be controlled or manipulated and vomited on in those ways. And so what are some tools and some things, because this is going to kind of piggyback off of what we talked about last week, is, what are those tools and those things that for being in those relationships, if you're in them. So say I'm in this toxic relationship, say I'm back in my, we're going to revert back when I came to you like 7 years ago, when I was in an extremely toxic, abusive relationship, and I'm feeling all of these things. I don't really, I'm like understanding now, I'm just opening and really realizing that this person is toxic and I'm absorbing way too much, and he's putting all of his problems and things on me to solve and fix. What would you tell me those steps to take next? And what do I need to do? I'm not quite there of getting out of the marriage yet, but I'm like halfway in, halfway out. Maybe there could be some resolution, or maybe, this is my way out. What is that advice you would give me?
Yeah, often when I see patients like that, it's really working on their self-confidence first, because often when they're in those type of abusive relationships, they lose their own identity, right? They lose their confidence. and they kind of lose that sense of awareness of themselves, because they get so beaten up in those toxic relationships. But it's also dividing whether they want to continue with that toxic relationship, or do they want to step out of that situation and get as far away as they can from it. Because often when you see abusers like that taking advantage of somebody who is very caring, very emotionally connected, or even more, sympathetic to that person's, problems, but yet it's all one-sided if you really look at it. The empathic or sympathetic person is always nurturing and giving, where the other side is always taking and taking and draining and draining. And they don't really value or appreciate what that other person is giving them, or how they are just as a person, right? Often they, get stepped on, or they get abused emotionally or physically, even in some cases. And so often they have to step back and look at the situation and kind of see, is this a healthy situation for me? Emotionally, physically, is this something that can be worked on? And if the partner who is the abuser doesn't really want to work on it, or they just want to stay stuck in that negativity and blaming that person for everything, often that's when the other person who is the giver and the more sensitive one needs to kind of step back and look at themselves and say, do I really want to continue in this toxicity? Do I really want to keep taking on this emotional baggage from the abuser? The person that's the toxic part of the relationship. And so, but sometimes they'll work on it, and that person will recognize, what they're doing and how they're treating their partner, and want to get that help. But they have to be willing 100% to do it on their own without my partner wants me to do this. Right. No, it's not about it is about what the partner wants, but it's also about, does that person really truly want to do it? Or are they just doing it because they're just sufficing the partner's wish? So you really have to look at the two divided sides of it. And often when I see it being a very overly whelming toxic situation where it causes that person who's more empathic and more sensitive and more of a giver, depression, crying, constant anxiety, and constant just down in the dumps, and never being able to feel good about themselves, always feeling like they're never good enough. That's usually what happens too, is, that partner makes them feel that they're not good enough. They talk them down like they're not good enough. They say derogatory things to them, making them feel like no one else would ever want them, right? Or that they just they make them believe that they're a terrible person when they're really not. And so often when you have those situations, it's really about, now you need to divide yourself, create boundaries, and maybe even step away from the situation and get outside of that clouded box that they live in. No longer, because when we're in that kind of toxic zone of our relationship, it clouds our true vision of who we are. It clouds our purpose, right? It doesn't really keep us in that happy, positive state. It keeps us down instead of at that happier state where we should be, and living a good, healthy life, instead of a toxic life. Right. But really, it's when I'm counseling patients like that, it's really getting them back into their own happy place and back into that confident place, instead of allowing that other person to constantly, step on them or drain their energy. No longer allowing that and creating boundaries within those relationships. Often I don't do couples counseling, but I'll do individual counseling. But I have done couples counseling in the past where, say it can be the opposite way. Like, for instance, I had a case where the man was being manipulated and abused by the woman, and it was pretty severe abuse. I mean, it was bad. So in that situation, I had to advise that he had to step away from this relationship and get away from the toxicity and get away
Mm-hmm.
from the abuse, because the type of abuse was very psychotic. It was like, this person was making up stories that weren't true. They were creating such drama for this man and such distress and really making him feel crazy when he wasn't crazy. And it was really her demise of not only her jealousies, but her own issues that she also carried herself, that she projected on him, from her past, that she refused to get help for. And when a partner refuses to identify their toxicities and how they're sabotaging not only themselves, but sabotaging their partner and their relationships, and they refuse to get help for that, that's when you really need to step back and get out of it, because that person will never get better. They won't recognize what they're doing. They won't recognize the destructive patterns that they're offering in their relationship, or even to themselves, because it's really self-destruction to themselves, right? Because they're destroying everything around them by having that toxic behavior. And destroying that relationship. And even with their children, it's kind of sad that children are stuck in the middle of this, and I've seen that time and time again with patients, where they have to come in and they have to realize what is best for the children, and what's best for them as well, because if they're not in a good, healthy, and happy relationship, neither are the children. The children are stuck in between it. And so they've got to be able to step out of that and take the children out of that toxic and abusive relationship. That way, all of them can be free, of the negativity. And so, but often when couples do want to, continue the relationship and try to get better, it's really about, the two people not only doing individual counseling for themselves, but also how to recommunicate with each other, reconnect, right? In a different way. What was that connection like from the very beginning when they met, right? Did they value each other? What was the friendship like? Sometimes I'll find that couples, if they didn't really have a true friendship or true respect in the very beginning, they're not going to have that in the marriage. Because it's going to continue being toxic and controlling, and sometimes getting even worse, than just that. And so even that we have to, and when they do their homework, the ones that do want that help, they do have homework, daily routines that they have to go by to get better. Usually I'll have the people create what they call a life board or a goal board. Right? You create and write out or put in that goal board, what is it that you want for your life? Not for everybody else. You've got to do it for yourself, because you've got to create goals and steps to improve and enhance your life. And, and you can create many goals with that. It's really about creating new and healthy habits. What do those habits look like? And it's daily habits and daily routines. It's just like when we get up in the morning, when we brush our teeth, right? That's a daily habit. Or we drink that coffee or tea in the morning, that becomes a habit. Well, how about integrating something else that's a healthy, positive habit? Like Rachel said, going out, standing in the grass, grounding your feet to the earth, breathing that air. When do we ever take time to really breathe the air? Like my grandmother always used to say, stop and smell the roses sometimes, because the flower essence will heal you. Right? It'll help you to clear out those negativities. I never really understood that as a kid, what she quite meant. But it's like an old thing, where you hear stop and smell the roses, right? Well, it really was something that they did to release things, or to go back out in nature and just appreciate what we have around us, and to kind of bring another, just healthy mental mindset, back to our life. Sometimes when I think about, now I'm going out to the mountains, I'm hiking, I'm looking at the beauty of nature, right? I'm
Right.
in that scene where it's so gorgeous and it's like, wow, look what God created for us to enjoy and love and to
Mm-hmm.
nurture and take care of, but appreciate as well. Well, we also need to do that in our relationship. Look at the beauty and the positive side of what we've been given in that relationship and appreciate what it is. And even if there isn't something that we don't like, we'll work on bettering it.
Mm-hmm.
Work on maybe creating positive, new, healthy habits and goals, for yourself or even as a couple, creating those goals, taking time to write it down, look at it, decide how are we going to create these goals and what steps are we going to take to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's really about creating the steps, creating that daily habit to our life,
Right.
and creating that positive life.
Right.
And so, but yeah, and those tools of being able to, whether you're going to take that salt bath or let the water run over you as you're in the shower and just kind of let it cleanse and heal you, no longer take on that toxic energy from others.
Mm-hmm.
Using the stones to ground and balance. I know when I go to my chiropractor, he puts little magnets on my ankles, and the back of the ankle right there to
Uh-huh.
help ground and help keep you balanced. Well, magnets are another really good one because they do bring balance and they connect you, to
Mm-hmm.
magnetic frequency. And amethyst is a really great stone too for healing the body and keeping the higher vibration up, but also attuning the higher sensory and frequencies of the kinesthetic sensory.
Mm-hmm.
And even that empathic gift, amethyst is a really great stone for attuning the empathic gift and being able to also protect and guard it,
Mm.
so that you're not absorbing
Mm-hmm.
other weird frequencies from all around us. It's like our neighbors, even, it's like I live in a duplex. So what do? I cleanse, I protect, and I put stones along the wall so that I'm not absorbing whatever's next door or
Right.
even out on my porch, like weird neighbors across the
Uh-huh.
sidewalk right there.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, no, keep your energy over there. I
On
don't
that
want
side.
it. Right. Keep
Uh-huh.
it there.
Uh-huh.
I have my boundary up.
Yep, that
Right.
I have to do that with my house too. It's like it's like the perimeter is like where the fence is, but it's like, you know what? That's where it is, and you have to stay on the other side. Whatever is going
Right.
on from these other homes, because there's some weird things that are on,
Mm-hmm.
go on. And
Yeah.
so it's like you have to put up that grid. So it's like I
Me
have two.
too.
It's like you have the house grid. Well, actually three. You have your personal grid, you have the
Yeah.
house grid, and then
Yeah.
you have the outside perimeter up. So it's like you have
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
three protections, if in a sense, in
Mm-hmm.
your home, that you got to put up to really hold that space around your home.
Mm-hmm.
Me too. If you're a visual person, I always imagine like this force field bubble that's invincible, that only love, light, things of creator and my ancestors, can see and come through. And it's this bubble that goes and shields around me and around my house, that's impenetrable. So nothing,
Mm-hmm.
nothing can penetrate through it. Nothing can come through it. But what happens
Right.
is that once you get more in tune with this too, you'll actually start hearing and feeling like the incoming bomb, and all of a sudden you get a
Yeah.
radar incoming. And so, that's where you have to practice, like what
True.
Sherrie was saying earlier, like that's when you have to act on it, and you can't just
Yeah.
put
Yeah.
it aside, because what if she had went to bed 2 hours earlier when she wanted to, and then she would have been in a deep sleep when that person was trying to break in her home. And
Yeah.
so, it's like you got to have that shield in the perimeter. But then when you
Mm-hmm.
become in tune with it, then you'll start hearing the incoming. And so then that's
Yeah.
when you can go and you pray and you put that shield up, even more of that protection of,
Yeah.
like, protect me from whatever this is coming, rebuke where this is
Mm-hmm.
coming from, send this back to where it's going, send this back with love, light. There's different ways, in a good way, to send that evil, the negative
Mm-hmm.
energy that's trying to come in and distort your energetic field. We are too allowed to protect ourselves from those things. And I once
Yeah.
had a hard time with that, because the abuser had basically almost like brainwashed me in a sense of saying that I'm evil if I protect myself and swing back. And in
Mm-hmm.
that sense. And so it was
Right.
actually a creator that came to me and one night and was like, Rachel, if you were in a physical face to face war combat and someone was coming
Mm-hmm.
at you with a sword and they were going to come strike you with the sword, are you going to stand there with your hands behind your
Yeah.
back, or are you going to swing that sword back and protect yourself? And I
Mm-hmm.
said, well, I'm going to swing the sword back and protect myself.
Right.
And creator said, well, it's the same thing in the spiritual way. He goes,
It's
you
true.
have to be, you also need to hit the sword back or put that shield up and protect
Mm-hmm.
yourself in that same way.
Right.
And you're not doing
Yeah.
wrong by protecting yourself. He had to put it in a physical
Mm-hmm.
manner. It's like, if you will physically protect yourself if somebody's coming after you, will you protect yourself? Well, yes. Well,
Yeah.
why aren't you
Yeah.
doing it in the spiritual way? Why are you standing there with your hands behind your back, taking it?
Yeah.
And so,
True. True.
so it's like it's hard. And that was I think one of the hardest things for me, is going through that transition was like, oh, I can protect myself. Oh, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
evil, because he made me believe that I was the evil one, and all, my prayers were the
Mm-hmm.
good prayers, and his way was his way. And so it brainwashed me in a sense of, and like broke me down to making me feel like, okay, no, like I just have to take it. Like I can't, I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to do bad medicine. I don't want to get in trouble with creator or my ancestors or, my elders. So I'll just, kind of stand here with my hands behind my back and just take the abuse spiritually.
Right.
And,
Right.
but we wouldn't do that in a physical warfare. So
Mm-mm.
that was a big thing. And you were actually the one that too, my mom too, but you helped me through that transition about 8 years ago. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so let's dive into that part
Right.
of that.
Oh, yeah, because I think that empaths often will take on those type of relationships and not even realize sometimes that they're in it, but they feel it, sense and know it. But sometimes we ignore it because being an empath, you're a little bit more sensitive to things. You're a little bit more sympathetic to things as well.
Mm-hmm.
But being sympathetic doesn't necessarily, mean that we have to take on everybody's crap, right? And all their abuse and their negative energies. And often those type of negative people will also attract to empaths because they are more sympathetic of that person.
Mm-hmm.
And so they basically put up with their crap for quite a while until they're done with it and just say, no more, I can't stand this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And often especially, the women that are more empathic, what do they call it? Mother's intuition, right?
Right.
Women have a higher sensory and intuition than a lot of times than men do, but men also have it, but often they ignore it. Right.
Right.
Or they say, oh, that's not true, or this doesn't exist, but it actually does. Men
Mm-hmm.
do too, just as equally. They just have to learn how to pay attention. They have to learn how to attune to it a little bit more than what a woman would.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, women are born a little bit more sensitive anyway. Our energies are a little softer, or our guard might be a little bit more down than how a man is. They're more
Uh-huh.
guarded. And so that's why their sensory often isn't quite attuned as much, to other people's energies or things around them.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they're fighting a war or they're in battle, then they're really attuned and really sensitive and very hyper aware of what's around them.
Mm-hmm.
But empathics are very hyper aware and very attuned, of things around them as well. And I'm not saying that this doesn't exist with men. It does exist with men.
It does.
And it exists a lot in the Indigenous communities and Hispanic communities because we're brought up with that belief. We're brought up with, the belief of, the creator and spirit, and listening to the spirit, listening to the creator, listening to the energies of the earth, listening to the animals and the people, and paying attention and being aware of these things, and not just ignoring or shutting it down. And so where, maybe other, types of people, they don't so much, are raised in that as we are today, even today, it's like, I remember my grandmother always being more of that person who was very empathic and very kind of the teacher type, that taught you how to pay attention and be aware, but listen and, and learn in a totally different way than how we would learn today. Today we're so, confused with the computer age, where kids are stuck in their phones or they're stuck playing games all day. What does that really do to their brain? It really kind of shuts things down. It doesn't allow them to be that hypersensitivity awareness. They kind of shut it down so much because they don't have that connection so much with people other than what they have through their phone or computer. And that's not really a great connection. And so, but, and even like with your situation, Rachel, we cleared those things from you and worked on your boundaries. Your biggest thing is really create boundaries. That's a big thing, and you'll see that a lot of the relationships of, people that are in abusive situations, that abuser can't stand the boundaries. They don't want you to have boundaries.
No, they get mad.
Want you. They get mad, right? They get very angry. You can't have a voice, or you can't have a thought, those kind of things. I'll see that a lot with people that I counsel. They'll say, well, I can't speak my truth, or I can't speak my word. If I do, there's consequences, right? Because they can't have boundaries. They can't speak what they truly feel or have an opinion, basically.
Right.
And when that happens, what does it do? It shuts our system down. Pretty soon, we don't want to feel, we don't want to talk, we don't want to have that, opinion, basically, of our true self. We wouldn't even want to think about it. And so often that just shuts down, our kinesthetic sensory. It shuts down our true, empathic sensory as well. And so even though it's still there, but it's just like that little piece of us is just like ripped apart or stolen away. Instead of being allowed to be expressionate and be able to have our boundary and have our voice.
Right.
And so, but yeah, boundaries are so important. It really is, because you've got to have your own independence. No matter what the relationship is like, you still need your independence. You still need to know who you are. Right. And still have that little sense of freedom that says, okay, here I am in a trusting, loving, positive relationship, but I can still have my friends and my family around. I can still create this beautiful circle, and I can involve you in that circle. Even if you don't want to be involved, oh, well, do your thing and I'm going to do my thing. Right. But having healthy respect and boundaries with it, not just saying I'm going to go do what I want. No, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
You've got to have that healthy communication with the relationship, but that healthy level of love, trust, and respect amongst the relationship as well. Just like you would a friend, how would you treat your best friend, right? Well, that relationship should be like your best friend. How would you talk with that best friend? How would you communicate with them? How do you, create this, fun diversity of the relationship so that the empathic side of you doesn't have to feel drained or feel blocked up or feel like you have to take on some sort of abuse or, negativity from the other person. And even when somebody comes home and they just want to unload their bad day, well, that's fine. Just listen, but don't absorb it. Right.
Exactly.
But also guide. right? As a coach or a mentor would do, as a friend would do. How would a friend treat that relationship if they come and they talk about their problems with each other? What is that friendship allows you to express without negativity or without judgment? Often in a toxic relationship, there's a lot of judgment that gets put on that person that's empathic, by that abuser or person that isn't really healthy themselves. And so, when that judgment starts taking place, you feel unworthy, right? You don't feel good about yourself.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you lose that sense of worthiness. You lose that sense of awareness of yourself and who you are. And I call it kind of losing a little bit of your identity. And so then you've got to rebuild that after you get out. Now you got to re-find yourself, right?
Right.
And you've got to redevelop that life and figure out, well, what is my new goal? Who am I? What's my purpose? Right? Well, it's really creating the goals for yourself and what that life board looks like, and recreating those healthy boundaries with other or new relationships, but also recreating a way to communicate and how you want to be treated. Right. It's really about how would I treat someone and how would I want to be treated, right? And being able to, create that healthy and positive environment for yourself, even if it's with friendships. And so, but an empath often, they will get in these toxic relationships without even realizing that it's happening until they're already in it.
Right.
Right. Because there's a lot of people that really fake really well in the beginning of the relationship. And don't really show their true self. There's a lot of them that, that's called, what is it? The honeymoon stage of the relationship. You show your good side for a while until the true side starts to come out.
It's like, it's always like when you get comfortable. I always noticed, like in the previous past toxics, it was like, it was when I got comfortable and I was like, oh, this is all good. Then that's when they're like, oh, okay, now we can let this go. Oh, now we can kind of reveal this, or, oh, now this will happen. And then but then you go and call them out, and then so then it becomes this like back and forth too of like, okay, now you call them out and say, communicate, this is what's happening, this is how I'm feeling. But then they're like, oh, well, then they try to turn it around. Like, I always call it the mirror effect, where they're holding the mirror, but it's really, they're talking to themselves. They're not even talking to you. They're talking to themselves, and they're projecting themselves onto you. So it was like, I after a while, I started learning that it was like almost like a truth serum in a way. It was like, oh, that's what you're doing, because I know I'm not doing those things. So psychology over here says, you're projecting what you're doing onto me. And so then I started paying attention to these like cycles and these patterns. And sure enough, it was all of these different things that are happening, and they're projecting their own issues onto me, making me feel like it was my problem and I'm the one that has to go solve it and fix it. So that's part of that happens.
It is part of that type of relationship, and empaths often will feel guilty. They'll take on the sense of grief, and depression, and they'll feel guilty about what it is that person just blamed them for. When actually in reality, they really aren't that person that the other one is making them out to be, or saying that they did something that they really didn't do. And then you're always second guessing yourself, right? That's another thing, it's like, and then you start mistrusting your true self, right? You start mistrusting how you really feel, and not paying attention to the old ways of who you were before. And so, but yeah, that's where, those boundaries have to come into effect, with those toxicities of relationships like that. And not really taking on the belief that, oh, well, I am this way now. Well, why would I be that way if I've never been that way? If they try to make it out to be like you lied about something, or you did something that you really didn't do. And so often empaths can be tricked into believing these ways or things that abuser is trying to convince them of, right? And it's really kind of the game of manipulation and reverse psychology.
Yep.
And so when you look at an empath where they're more sensitive, they're more attuned, they often get tricked, or, thinking that they're really not something. I get patients where, like I was saying in the beginning, with this one young girl who her family was telling her she was crazy because she was feeling things and sensing things, and they were belittling her in such a way to where she started to believe it. That she was really crazy. But she wasn't crazy at all. She was just a very hypersensitive empath.
Right.
Just because they didn't believe it. And then her mom kept saying it was of the devil, that the church tells her that that's of the devil. Well, if that's what your church is telling you, I'm sorry, because it isn't, But yeah, and this poor girl, she was just tortured by that, that because she, of all things, wanted to be so close to her mother and be able to communicate and talk to her mother about anything, about things she was feeling or seeing or a vision or something that she saw. Well, who's she going to talk to about it in her circle if none of those people in her circle believe it? Right. And they constantly cut her down or tell her she's nuts. And so it's such a sad thing, and where sometimes empaths, when they start going through that self-doubt or depression or fear of something, because that's built into them by that deprogramming by everybody else telling them that's how they are. Sometimes they'll go to drugs or alcohol and they'll try to drown it out, right? They don't want to deal with it now, when actually they need to just find a circle of people who understand, that they can talk to, even if it's a spiritual counselor, or they find a group, that they can connect to with like-minded people that would understand and help kind of train that person on how to divert it, how to deal with it, and also how to talk about it. That's a really important part, because when you tell people stuff and they don't really believe you, and that's a good majority of the world, unfortunately. And then you've got to learn how to communicate what you're feeling, instead of coming out with, oh, I just felt this, or I just saw this and they didn't see it, but you did. And, you've really got to divert the way that you talk about it. You have to say it in such a way where you're like, oh, you kind of have to feel it out, right? You got to feel out
the energy. That's
the energy of that space. Gift. Yeah, it is. You have to feel that out. You have to really kind of read people a little bit on what their beliefs are as well, so that you know how to express it. I know I've had to learn that over and over and over for many years, on how to be able to communicate with people who really may not be believers, or maybe they don't understand. They might believe, but maybe they really never have experienced it. So they're kind of on the fence with it instead. Like, I kind of believe it, I kind of don't, in that way. So then you just have to explain to them, well, you believe in animal instinct or gut instinct, don't you? Do you listen to your gut? And you just have to say, well, my gut instinct told me this, right? Or I felt this. And instead of like expressing it in a way where, oh my gosh, you freak out and have this like sense of, saying how it actually came to you.
Right.
But then you have to learn how to express it a little bit differently, where it's just not expressed in a way where you do sound crazy.
Right? People say, that's why it's a bunch of Ouija, hocus pocus, out of this world type thing, Yeah.
Oh, yeah. When I started opening up to my mom about it, because it was so funny that, we talked about it a little bit here and there, because her mother would have dreams and visions of things that would actually come true. And then my dad's mother on the other side and my great grandmother, they were both intuitives. And it goes back many generations through our Indigenous people and our Mexican lines. And so because people are very spiritually connected. But we
Mhm.
were never really told, oh, you're crazy or that doesn't exist, because they lived with it, right?
Right.
Many generations back
Mhm.
and coming down even to now. And so when I started talking to my mom about it, and she really opened up about it, every time she would think about me, I would hear her thought. And now, mind you, she lives 3.5 hours away in Eastern Oregon. So I would hear her thought and pick up that vision of her. I would get a vision or an image of her face, right?
Mhm.
Empaths will get this too, where they'll get an image of someone.
Yep.
And it's because they just picked up that frequency of that thought of that person sending it to them.
Uh-huh.
Right. So then when I had a chance after work, I'd pick up the phone, call my mom, hey, and then she'd say, hey, you mind reader, you
Yep.
must be hearing my thought, right?
Uh-huh.
But then
Uh-huh.
we'd play this little telepathic game on the phone too. I'll be like, Mom, what am I thinking right now? But again, it's about training that telepathic gift also, because if you never use it, you lose it. Right?
Right.
Like anything. It's like if
Uh-huh.
I didn't play my flutes over and over, my drum and my guitars, well, guess what? I would lose that
Right.
ability. I mean, I could play it later,
You'd have
but
to
it may not be
practice.
as good. Right.
Uh-huh.
Exactly.
You have to go back to repracticing and going back through the steps from the beginning back again, or wherever in level that you kind of like dwindled down to get back up to the beginning, or to where
Right.
you were
Right.
before. Yeah.
Well, and
Mhm.
even like with, connections with, like, say, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, when there's a really strong, strong spiritual connection or physical connection,
Mhm.
often these people will finish each other's sentences before they even get done talking, right? And
Right.
it's because that frequency is like so connected in that empathic sensory. So
Mhm.
that kinesthetic sensory is really connected, and often they can pick up, the emotion or the feeling of the loved one
Uh-huh.
before they even get home, or connect with them. And they'll
Right.
know instantly how they're feeling that day, or even, what's going on with them.
Uh-huh. That's like
Mhm.
with Eric. I've been working with him on this because he didn't really grow up with this. And so just in the
Mm,
past, year and a half we've been together, I've
yeah.
been helping him with this. And so now it's finally getting to the point where I pick up on him when things are going on, or if
Right.
something's off, or because he
Hmm.
has diabetes, and so type
Oh,
1.
right.
Right. And so, his numbers go wonky, and I can feel certain things. And so,
Right.
I'll message him like, what's your numbers at? Are you okay? Like, what's going on?
Right.
Or I'm feeling this sadness all of a sudden. What's
Yeah.
happening? But
Right.
now, because he's been consciously working on it too. He now is starting to pick up things, and, even feeling, like if I have like my pain level in my hip because of my muscle that's torn, he's like, all of a sudden he'll be like reaching over and grabbing his hip, and he'll look at me and he's
Right.
picking it up now, and he's like, is your pain level really high right now? And I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, I can barely move right now. I'm like having a hard time walking. And
Yeah.
we could be in different
Right.
states, and we can feel that connection. And it's,
Yes.
even too, like, it's just like, a lot of people, you'll get, all of a sudden, oh, maybe I should just message this person real quick, or maybe I
Right.
should call this person real quick. And then all of a
Right.
sudden it's like, hey, well, I was just thinking about you. And so
Yeah.
it's those little
It's
things
like
too
that.
that start to pick up, and you're like, okay, we're picking up on this. You and I, we
Mm,
always end
right.
up at the salon
Yeah.
around the same time,
Same
without
time.
even realizing it. And like, we
Right.
just
Right.
arrive at the same time. We're at the same place, and we arrive at the salon. We don't even realize
Right.
it. And we're like, oh, there we are. Hello.
This
And
is
then, like,
true. Yeah.
before we got on, I literally had just signed on. You popped on, and then I was like, all right, I gotta go do my prayer real quick. And then you're like, okay, I gotta go do this real quick. And then, like, right when I came back to the camera, boom, you come back to the camera. So it was like,
Yeah.
even then, we're connected, and like all,
Right.
or even through this whole thing, I'll read questions that I see over here from the comments, and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden you start talking about them. So
Right.
for
Right.
those that are watching, like we can telepathically connect to each other. So even
Yeah.
through this whole our lives that we do, um there's most of the time we're telepathically connecting, and I'll be telling her
Right.
something, and then all of a sudden she'll just start talking about it, and I didn't send her a
Hmm.
text message, I didn't send her a little note or anything. It's just that we're hearing each other, and so I'm like,
Right.
I always say we're connected.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. Yeah. It's so true. I think when you do have that connection with, either a friend or family member or loved one, you do pick that connection up with each other. You don't even
Uh-huh.
have to be speaking, and then all of a sudden that person calls you, or you get a message or bump into each other or something else, and
Uh-huh.
we're all kind of connected that way either way. But empaths especially have that higher sensory, right, where they really connect strongly with other people, especially ones that they're closer to or they have a stronger bondship with.
Mm-hmm.
I know that in previous relationships that I've had, one guy thought that I was really crazy. And I was like driving all the way to Longview working, and he was all the way in Beaverton where he lived, right? Well, I had a
Uh-huh.
vision. I had to pull over on the side of the road because I had a vision of him cheating on me with this young girl that was like half of his age, like his
Uh-huh.
daughter's age. And he had just turned 50, And I was like, why is he out with this 30-something-year-old? Like they're going to go
Right.
on a trip and he's buying her all this stuff. So I actually had a vision of the mall that they were at. Now, mind you, I'm driving, going to work, and I'm all the way up in Longview. And I'm just at the Kelso exit, getting ready to pull off there. And I had to pull over because I was just like, oh my God, is this really happening? And I
Right.
got so pissed and started crying. And I was just like going, oh, I can't cry over this. Right. And I
Right.
would just
Right.
realize that, if that's how it's going to be, then this is going to end. Right.
Right.
So then I text him and I said, why are you at the mall with some blonde girl buying her handbags and perfume? Right. So I saw in the
He's
vision
all
what he was
like,
buying. So he really busted himself because what he said was, I thought you were at work. Where are you? Why are you stalking me? Right. So he
exactly.
busted
He's
himself
shocking.
because of what he said. Right. So he just confirmed my vision,
Uh-huh.
just confirmed it by saying, what store are you at? Are you
Yep.
across from, and telling me,
Yeah, he's
thinking I was
thinking
at the
that you're
store?
actually stalking him, and you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
no, I'm almost to work.
Yeah. I'm almost to
An
work all
hour
the way. And
away.
yeah, exactly. And I'm sitting there going, wow, okay. And then, and then he starts calling me crazy and all these things, right? But
Uh-huh.
then really the truth just came out of what was really happening there. So it was really just like creator saying, I'm going to throw this at you and you better listen,
Yeah.
right?
I'm warning you. I'm
Yeah,
showing you what's
exactly.
happening.
And then all these other things came out of it. And I was just like, yep, okay, thank you, Creator, for allowing me to see this before I got
Hmm.
in any deeper into this relationship.
Right.
Because we were engaged of all things, it's like, oh, now imagine if I had married
Right.
that cheater, right?
No,
It would be
right.
worse because then other
Exactly.
things happen. But as an empath, you do get those visions, you do get those sensories, and it can affect you in a way where you can feel emotional and start crying, or you could feel like something just hit you with a big, bat over your head,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And so, because that's
Literally.
what it feels like. It does,
It
it can.
does.
And so, but really, it's like being able to trust yourself when you do get those visions and feelings and emotions as well. You really have to trust it. And I know in the beginning for me, that was kind of a hard thing, like it is for everybody when they're first trying to learn it and figure it out.
Hmm.
But then after a while, when you have so many confirmations of things over and over and over, that's when you really need to go, aha, okay, now I really, really need to pay attention and listen and
Right.
trust, right? Trust what you feel. Don't dismiss it.
Mm-hmm.
because often we do dismiss it and we don't trust it. But our biggest thing is that first thing that comes to us, we so need to trust it, because if we don't, that's where we can get in big trouble. Right.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it can be, quite the thing. But yeah, I've had quite the experience with that. So I definitely have some personal things with it that I could speak on, because, of having so many things happen, but also as a counselor, being able to counsel people that also have these things going on, and
Mm-hmm.
teaching them how to trust it, and really teaching them how to tune in, to those empathic abilities.
Right. Because it's so important when you do that, because especially because I've been there too, where at one point I didn't really have um, a lot of people around me that really understood this level. It was
Right.
actually me going through the journey that opened the eyes for my family to see this world of things. And so it was
Yes.
like my family, they understand the intuition and the spiritual side and
Mm-hmm.
connection, but they didn't
Yeah.
understand that toxic part of relationships and things that can happen. And so it
Mm-hmm.
was like, it was interesting because like for me, the more I was in tune with the toxic and the bad medicine that was in my marriage, it was like my family started learning along with me and seeing along with me. But for a moment, there was a moment in time where nobody believed me and nobody
Right.
understood what I was going through, and everybody thought I was crazy. And and for me,
Mm.
there was some demonic things that were with my ex kids, step kids, and so it was like
Mm-hmm.
nobody wants to believe that their like kids can actually have demonic things possess them.
Oh,
And
right.
but I
Mm-hmm.
witnessed it right in front of my face, and I can't
Mm.
deny it. I saw it, and nobody else saw it, but I did. So there was
Mm.
a moment, where
Sure.
that feels like you're crazy
Right.
and things like that. And so for
Mm-hmm.
me, I always had to go back to creator and remembering that at the end of the day, if all things are said and done and I'm standing before creator, am I in the right? Did I
Mm.
do the right things? Did I say the right things? Am I crazy? Like, so that's the other thing. I know I'm not crazy.
Right.
Creator saw this. I don't need physical witnesses to watch me. And to be able to speak and say, yes, this happened. And yes, Rachel's right. But if you were to go into
Mm-hmm.
the spiritual side of things, I will have ancestors behind me, standing there beside me, backing me up, saying, yes, we were there helping her protect her during this time in this
Right.
dark place.
Sure.
Creator will be there standing saying, yes, I saw and I witnessed, and I know that you went through these things. And so
Mm-hmm.
it was my grandma that told me that. She would always say, is it true? And I'm like, yes. And she goes, well, then that's all that matters. You don't need to explain it to anybody. Creator knows.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, for
so
sure.
that's because I think there's a part of us that
Um,
wants to like prove everyone that we're right, but then we start driving ourselves
True.
crazy because we're going around saying like, look, 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 and then you have everybody saying, no, no, I don't see it. No, you're crazy. But then it also starts doing this mental thing to you because you're like trying to show everybody, but nobody's wanting to take the
Right.
the blinders off to see. So then you drive yourself
Mm-hmm.
crazy and you start making yourself doubt yourself even more, when you don't need to prove anything to
Mm-hmm.
anybody. If you know in
Right.
your heart that what is going on around you is happening, all that matters is at the end of the day is that creator and your ancestors are standing behind you as your witnesses,
Mm-hmm.
or are they not standing behind you? So that's the other thing. So it's
Right.
the other side, if on the abuser side and that toxic side, if they're correct in their and things, then they won't be faced with creator standing with the finger, or they'll have
Mm-hmm.
ancestors and they'll have people
Yeah.
backing them up behind them saying, yes, they were a good person. Yes, they were honorable. Yes. But when you look at them and you look at all the deceit and all the things, and like you were saying on the last podcast, a lot of these toxic people, they don't have many close people around them, and they don't have people that are really close and tight, and like they're not your person that, you know, if something at the drop of the hat or the dime happens, that I'm going to go and call that person and know that that person's going to come and save me and help me and be by my side. I don't know if that person's going to be by my side or if they're actually going to be on the other side, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's, you know, having that too, I think is, you know, not know, you know, you're not crazy. And there are many of us out here that go through this, and you don't have to go around and, you know, show everybody what's going on and just to prove that you're not crazy. If you know in your heart and in your spirit that what is going on and it's your truth, then that's your truth. And at the end of the day, if you know you can stand before Creator and know that what you're saying and what's going on, and you know these things are true, then, you know, hold on to that and don't worry about the world around you and what others are thinking. And because we all have our own you know, agendas, we all have our own journeys, we all have our own emotions, our own things. And so, you know, it's again going back to, like I always say, is going back to the sun dance and staying focused on the pole, staying focused on Creator, staying focused on your purpose and your goals and your drive and your dream. And what is your purpose here? You know, and that's what a lot of these toxic people try to keep us from, is our purpose. And so it's you know, another thing is reverting back to like that childlike mind, you know, of that, the pureness and the curiosity to learn and grow, and the unknown of the mysterious things in the world, and you know, having the imagination and being able to go back to that imagination to even be able to create your dreams and
Right.
to go there. So
Very true.
that's kind of like where I want to leave. Is there anything that you would like, last little words as we wrap this up, to leave with anybody with some words of inspiration?
Yeah, I would say definitely trust, you know, what you're feeling and that your true kinesthetic sensory is real. You know, it's nothing to ignore because it is part of our protection system. You know, it is part of who we are as spiritual beings as well, you know, and our body is naturally attuned into energy all around us. But it's also, you know, being able to trust in ourselves and feel like we're not crazy, you know, and to realize that, you know, these things are just part of who we are as human beings and not just something that, you know, needs to be deprogrammed out of us, right? You know, it's not something that needs to be really hidden, but it's really about how do we find that circle of people that we can trust to express the things that we're feeling or sensing, or, you know, being able to keep our boundaries, you know, with the toxic ones that don't really have our back, you know, and understanding the reality of, you know, even friendships. You know, I've had long friendships where I realize now, even today and through this whole COVID mess, that's really brought the real people out, you know, who they really are, if you know what I mean. And then I realized that, oh, these friends that I've had for all these years really aren't the friends that I thought they were. So not people that I could really trust to open up to or be able to communicate things with. And so we've got to keep those boundaries even with those friendships and understand, you know, who we can trust as we express, you know, what we're feeling or what we're picking up empathically, and being able to really train on how to ground ourselves, how to protect our energy, and how to kind of bring a positive outlook into it, you know, and not allow negativity to take us down that downward spiral through it,
Right.
you know.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're
Well,
welcome. Thank
we're
you.
gonna wrap it up because I know you got to get going, and we both have
Yeah.
clients that we need to go be with. So thank you. I appreciate your words and your wisdom and light that you bring, and I know everyone here appreciates you and your spirit and you being here. And they love you. So thank
No,
you. I
thank you.
love
Thank you,
you.
Rachel.
And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and everyone have a beautiful day. Stay tuned. I will be doing a grounding meditation for you all here probably tomorrow. And if you want more on relationships too, I also have a relationship podcast with my soon to be husband. It's Straight Couch Talk podcast. We dive in more to of what we were just a little bit talking about here with Sherrie, but we go more into our past and how we're applying everything that we were talking about in a positive way in relationships, and what we're doing in our relationship and applying all of these tools from the toxic and what we were just talking about with Sherrie. So if you want to tune into a relationship where it goes a little bit more into that, I have another podcast. It's a Straight Couch Talk podcast. So be back on Tuesday next week. Have a beautiful sister that's coming on next week, and we will have Sherrie back on here in the next a couple weeks or so. So, or a month. We'll get that figured out. I'll let you know. But have a beautiful day, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Oos.
Thank you.